Evening, everybody. It's me, Comic Crack. I wanted to shoot this video after waking up to the news of Richard Corbin dying on December 2nd, I believe, going in for some heart surgery and passing away shortly after. He's been kind of on my mind all day because I think it was kind of early this morning that I saw it, like pretty much right after I woke up, checking some social media and seeing the news. So just kind of been in my thoughts all day and thinking about his comics, thinking about his art, thinking about not only what it's meant to me, but kind of what he symbolizes, I believe, as an artist in not only mainstream comics, not only underground comics, not only self-publishing comics, but all of that, and kind of him as a man taking control of his career and kind of going the path that he's gone. So I have a huge stack of stuff here. It's mostly his underground comic work and then some of his self-published stuff. We'll kind of stop and go through some issues here and there and kind of look at some art. But I felt like I wanted to do something to signify. It's not often that a celebrity, an artist, someone, has much of an effect on me, to be honest. There's such a distance between my reality and their kind of reality that it doesn't affect me too much. But this one and Darwin Cook were ones that kind of took me by surprise. That, it's sad. It's sad when people leave us, and it always feels like it's too soon. And you always kind of have this idea of especially kind of creative types and artists that for some reason they are going to be around a lot longer. It definitely felt like he was still doing stuff, still contributing, still extremely active. Even him and his wife taking complete control of his career and running their Richard Corbin art site. There's an animated film that's in production that currently has an Indiegogo, which we'll talk about very briefly. And when I remember, I'll put some links in the description. Parallax Studios is doing that. I think the Indiegogo still goes for at least another couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. I'm going to support it in some way. I haven't quite decided in what capacity yet, whether it's just going to be kind of the Blu-ray copy, or they have some options for signed prints by Corbin, Jan Sternad, and then the director as well. So there's a bunch of incentives there. So we'll kind of touch on that, and I'll show the comic. Oh, Damien, how's it going? So I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of focus in and kind of look at a chunk of his undergrounds. I pulled a bunch out of the boxes. As I've talked about before, I've done a series of Corbin-related videos, all in my archives. If you go back, I was posting some of those on social media as well today. So we've talked about things like Gore Press in the past. More recently, just kind of the interview that he gave with Mirkwood Times. I believe that was issue number 4. If you go to that video, you'll be able to see kind of the breakdown of that. So I figured what better way to start, but let's start kind of right at the beginning. So this is the rip-off press version of Rolf. So Corbin started his career as an animator and got into comics and worked in some zines, specifically this Voice of Comicdom, from what I'm gathering, doing a little bit of research just recently to kind of get it cemented in my head a little more. That began 1968, 1969, right in around there. So Rolf was the story that took place in Voice of Comicdom, issue number 16 and 17. And as I've done with a bunch of my undergrounds, I've taken some information from Comics Joint. And on Comics Joint, they had it as 1970, but I'm pretty sure it was 1969. I mean, I absolutely could be wrong, but that's what I understand. So Ripoff Press put out this version, basically collecting the story into one comic, a bit of a different cover. So this front cover is there was a first printing. This is a second printing. So the first printing of this basically had this as its front cover and this as its back cover. So the second printing here just has it flipped. Gore Vidal, how are you? Thanks for joining us. And again, this is one that we've spoken about in a video, and I don't want to go into it too in depth right now, other than kind of give us a basis to kind of start off with, looking at the beginnings of his career. One of the things that I wanted to jump to with the beginnings of his career, actually, let's put that over here. Let's jump to this, because I was flipping through this again, and again, it's another one that we've spoken about. So Jan Sternad had a fanzine called Anomaly. This here is issue number 3. And again, we've looked at this as well before, but I wanted to take a little bit of a closer look, because what struck me about this one tonight is you're really seeing Corbin early on in his career, his style not quite what we know him as, and I kind of really loved this one. It had more of a sketchbooky type of feel, so have to point this out because this is a fantastic image. I used it for the thumbnail for this video as well too. Oh geez. No. So I guess one of the things, like when he did the underground stuff, he went by the moniker Gore a lot of the times, especially for the horror stuff. Sorry about that, Gore. Gore Vidal is alive, ladies and gentlemen. He is alive. He is here with us in the room. I'll prove it. Look, see, there he is. That's pretty funny though. So yeah, so he used that moniker. He used a couple of different monikers, but I think Gore was specific to his underground work. And then I'm assuming that's what led into the Fantagore, which we'll look at in a second. So here's a look at a brief encounter at war, written by Jan Sternad, and then art by our man Richard Corbin. Even some of like the foliage, there we go. Even some of the foliage, it's more kind of just gestural strokes that I'm just not used to seeing from him. And it'll become more apparent when we look at a panel like this one here, especially these characters up in here. There's a different quality to the imagery there that I'm really, really liking. It almost has kind of, these Europeans that I've been looking at lately. It has more of that kind of a feel to it. There are definitely still shades of Corbin in this early stuff, but even the lettering, which side am I here? Even the lettering here, not exactly the most well known for his lettering or his onomatopoeias, his sound effects and things. But a really, really nice style still. So this story suffered from a little bit of just kind of confusion. I think I got the gist of it, and we'll talk about it in one more second when we look at the next issue of Anomaly. So one of the things that has struck me today on thinking of Mr. Corbin is he really was a fierce, it feels to me like he was a really, really fierce independent way before anybody was even thinking about that type of thing. He really kind of maintained control of his own career and went in and wasn't, as much as he did in the underground and as much as he did in kind of the mainstream, he really just he really had a grasp on what he wanted to do and always maintain that control. And I think that that's a real admirable quality that you didn't see, especially at that time. And going in and creating his own publishing, so Fantagore Press, putting out his own comics from I think 86 to 94-ish, right in around there. Just having that ability to do that and having that control over his own career, that he could really, I imagine for the most part, he wrote his own ticket when he was doing things like this. So one of the things I wanted to point out in this is the final pages from Jan Sternad here, talking about the underground and other ponderings. Regardless of the opinion readers may have of the underground publishing scene, it must be admitted that underground publishers are having and will continue to have an increasing effect on the comic medium and the traditions surrounding it. The lack of editorial control in the undergrounds is an important step in releasing artists, who are usually their own authors in the underground, to do what they wish, totally. The fact that the underground publishers have been able to find distributors for such objectionable material is the second step. In fact, it is probably the most important one. Publishers are not all that difficult to come by, whereas a good distributor is to be valued equally with the Holy Grail. So he kind of goes on talking about what it would take and how much it would cost if he was dealing, the price tag that he would have to attach to this if he only had one option. But because there was a lot of options, self-publishing, and now the increasing kind of underground scene, especially at this time, 1971, I want to say here. Yeah, it has a date of 71, but a lot of the art is dated kind of 1970. So this is, 1969 arguably is kind of 68, 69, roughly around the underground kind of starting, and then 70 and 71 really picking up steam. And one other thing that he talks about in here is going into the underground and how the underground definitely has its drawbacks. So far, it has primarily been the playground for the artist's frustrations and sexual fantasies, catering to tastes equal to those of regular establishment porny buyers. Little has really been done to develop the medium to actually tell stories worth telling. So, I mean, there was this real sense, and I quote this from Jan Sternad because it feels to me that because of their close relationship, Sternad and Corbin would have had similar views on things, right? So it was this idea that we don't really want to be part of the mainstream because there's this real shit that's going on there and stories that don't appeal to us. But the underground has some pros, but then it still has those same cons. It really feels like they wanted to carve out their own niche. And he even talks about, like, what are we going to have to do with our stories? Are we going to have to kind of play to our more base instincts and talk about and show nudity, etc.? Because he talks about this format that Anomaly is taken just isn't sustainable for him. This is the last issue. He does talk about it not ending necessarily with this issue. There may be an issue 4, but it definitely won't be in this format, and it definitely won't be self-published by them. So that right there leads us into what eventually became Anomaly number 4, and distributed by Bud Plant. So this is an interesting one for a couple of reasons. I mean, it really is. There's the back cover there, which we saw in the other one. This really is them, I imagine, because around this time you have Fantagore coming out. He's done some grim wit. He's, I believe, I don't remember if Death Rattle or Slow Death or Skull or what the order is, but those are kind of those books that he was doing at that time. But here's Anomaly issue number 4 with another just stunning cover. Focus, there you go. Absolutely stunning cover. He ends the Anomaly 3 with a quote from Alice in Wonderland, and then he opens issue 4, Jan Sternad and Corbin. I'm pretty sure it's Sternad as well writing this one, Alice in Wonderlust, to kind of lead us into issue number 4. And in this one as well, so we get another version of Encounters at War, the same story that was in number 3, but this one changed a great deal. The art being the one thing that's kind of been rendered a little bit differently, and also panels completely changed. The story in this one is much more clear as to what happens to his prisoner. The two prisoners, one kind of escapes through this portal and the other one is trapped. He kind of leaves him. They've even changed the character as well here to, I believe, his sergeant, Captain Phillips. So they've changed the character to Captain Phillips as opposed to just another human in a cell. But the similar things happen, but you can see some of those touches are still there with that art. But it really feels more like fleshed out Corbin. So this one is dated 1970. So afterwards. Oh, don't escape on me there. There we go. Let me know if everything is sounding and looking okay, guys. Just give me a heads up if. One of the things this mic does is it picks up everything. So if there's any fan on or something on the computer, it usually does a bit of a rumbling. Let me know if anything shits the bed here. So then our last page, it's really apparent what's happened. He's left Captain Phillips back on the planet to fend for himself, as the camera pulls back to reveal kind of the carnage that he's left with. Really, really fantastic. And I think we were talking Gore in email, and I think Damien, we spoke about it as well too. But it's one of the things that stands out to me about Corbin also is that it's incredible to me that, I mean, he definitely has influenced people, absolutely. But he really does have his own style. I mean, yeah, sure, there's hints, but I mean, it's really... You can't, I don't believe, and maybe this just is my ignorance when it comes to the kind of lineage of art in different forms and stuff. It doesn't feel to me that there's a direct tracing back, especially in comics with a guy like Corbin. You can see a lot of artists where you can trace their lineage back to a handful of artists. It doesn't feel that way for Corbin. And I know that now there is a couple of people, and I'm blanking, I think it might have been a comic that you've shown in the past, Damien, that had a little bit of a hint of Corbin in the style, but it also feels like there's not really a direct lineage from him as far as a style goes. He really does feel like he's his own artist and has existed in his own, on his own. So saying that, we'll go to Fantagore. So this is Fantagore issue number 1. There was 4 different printings of this one. Issue number 1, the very first printing, Corbin published himself, and the one distinction is that one doesn't have a price on it. It doesn't have a price. I think Richard Corbin self-published Fantagore number 1 in 1970, 2 years after his first published work appeared in the fanzine Voice of Comicdom. So there you go. So that kind of clarifies the date a little bit to 1968. The first printing of Fantagore was 8.5 by 11 inches, and the cover and interior paper is heavier and higher grade than subsequent printings. Corbin contributes 2 of the 3 feature stories, though one was written by Starr Armitage. Herb Arnold and Armitage collaborated on the 3rd story. So we'll have a quick flip through this one. I'm not sure if we've ever flipped through this before, but another stellar back cover by Corbin. And I mean, the other thing that I've spoken about a million times is just his use of color and the way his color looks on the page due to the way that he was doing the color, and especially in these undergrounds on this even shittier paper, it really just stands out head and shoulders above anything else that was out there. And then in this one of the other things is we get a taste of something that makes an appearance up into, even you were talking about it, Damien, with the one-eyed witch woman there, his kind of horror host that he loves so much, that just there's multiple different versions of these hosts that appear through a lot of his work. Yeah. Like even that stone there at the top, just really up, focus there a little, if it'll focus. It just looks really, really nice. I don't know what's happening there. There we go. Really beautiful stuff. Yeah, I mean, and again, in here, we've looked at this one pretty close. In here, you're getting more of Corbin. I think this is stuff that was put in Heavy Metal magazine as well, too. I seem to remember us comparing the panels from Heavy Metal to this one. So, like I said, we're not going to go through every single issue here. Just a couple early on that I wanted to point out. And please, as I'm going, guys, if there's anything that you want to see a little more closely, another one of that. The second, third, and fourth printings are kind of, they're said to be indistinguishable from one another, but these two are different sizes. So I'm thinking that one is a second, one is a third. So I have kept both of them. And then Fantagor number 2. And Fantagor number 3. Number 4 I don't have. I was doing a little bit of searching for it tonight. I have a bunch of stuff that's on my wish list and bookmarked on eBay, so I'm going to be keeping my eyes out to see if there's any deals to be had, which I don't think there will be. So then we'll jump into, Gore had mentioned it as well too. Gore Vidal had mentioned it, Grim Wit. So I have Grim Wit number 1 and 2. And again, here we go with the horror hosts on the back cover. So Skull's got horror, Fantagor's got violence, Grim Wit's got all that and more between its covers. All kinds of neat stuff in adult comics these days. Buy them. So there you go. Oh, let's have a better look at that cover. Just stunning stuff. So here we have from, what do we got? So now we're in 1972 here. We get our horror hostess. Horrorlore is her name, Horrilor. And then we get a story, The Beast of Wolfton. I think there's 2 stories in this one. And again, it seems like fully formed yet again. Another one of those rare artists that just kind of enters the game fully formed, and his style remains consistent throughout his career, which is very, very impressive. Yeah, and then one short story here at the end called Necromancer. Which again, I believe might have been one that was in Heavy Metal magazine. And one of the things, like Damien was talking about in his video, I don't have a ton of the Warren stuff, but at this time he was also contributing to Warren in those magazines, and some of the underground guys didn't really want him kind of coming into, onto their turf with his kind of sword and sorcery and barbarians and those kind of stories. They weren't thrilled to have him, but again, he just kind of came in and did what he wanted to do, and continue to just create amazing stuff. And I love this interior back cover here as she's moaning and telling the story, and then you realize the bottom panel why she's moaning and groaning. And then another amazing cover, Grimwit, issue number 2, with I believe this is the one with Den. I think that's what you were saying earlier on. Gore Vidal. We'll pop this one open. Yeah, here you go. And then the other thing notable about this one is everything in color. So Jack Jackson doing a story called Death Rattle, which surprisingly enough, or maybe not surprisingly enough, is coming up next, the volume 1 of Death Rattle. And the horror hostess is back with us. And then here we go. This is the one that we've also done a comparison here to, just looking at the color. So there you go. You get your Den in there. And one of my favorite panels of Corbin's of all time. Right there. Just, I love the way that looks. I love the angle. I love the kind of modeling on that lizard creature there and the dimension that it's given. Just a beautiful, beautiful page, or a beautiful, beautiful panel. And then the use of the blues and the purples. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just incredible that he's had such that he's just had the career that he's had. And again, the idea that he has kind of come, the idea that he's had kind of control the entire time. I love that him and his wife work together on his output, and even doing some Kickstarters in the last few years. So I pulled Death Rattle, and then I'm looking on the back, and I don't see his name on this particular issue, Tom Veitch. I thought he appeared in all of the issues here, but I guess not. No, my mistake. So not in there. You know, I might be completely wrong. Maybe he didn't appear in Death Rattle at all. Oh yeah, no, there we go. Issue number 3. So just the wrong issue. Let's put those over there. We'll pop number 3. Yeah, he definitely did have some humor when it came to it. So here we go. Here's some, sorry, Death Rattle number 1. I just had them in reverse order. Apologies. So Death Rattle number 1, Corbin cover. And it's only the 3 issues for this first volume. Death Rattle had 3 or 4 volumes. I don't remember how many. But this volume, this first volume has some incredible stuff. Some John Pound as well. Peter Poplaski, Tim Boxall. The Tim Boxall stuff is pretty incredible in here too. Has a different kind of energy to it. There's some Boxall pages down here especially. And here we go. So Gastric. Well, I mean, speaking of humor, here you go. This is one that I read tonight. I read a few things tonight, and this is one of the stories that I revisited. Gastric Fortitude. A guy who is in the midst of a rainstorm, and a car breaks down, finds a house, finds a voluptuous woman who tells him to get out of his wet clothes. And an interesting thing happens in this one with panels like this, where it feels like I'm not quite sure what happened to that page there, but I can't imagine he was rushed to meet a deadline, but decided to just kind of draw it a lot more flat, maybe to kind of give you a better idea of the lighting there. I'm not quite sure. So he's locked in a room now and sees bones of her previous guests, and she starts to devour him. And lots of good meat on this one. Ha, I know what you're thinking. The innocent victim always comes back for revenge in these comic stories. And then she goes, no, 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 pops a couple of pills. Phew, that bastard. Lucky I had my antacid tablets. Womp, womp, womp. There you go. This is some, just while we're here, these pages are fucking incredible as well, too. This is Boxel again as well, I believe. Yeah. So anyway, there we go. That's Death Rattle numero uno. And did I say a year? 1972 on this one as well. So at the beginning, I was talking about the film that's being made, the animated film, and it's based off of this book here, Fever Dreams. And like I was saying, some of the backing that you can get is you can get a print of this front cover, signed by Corbin, signed by Jan Sternad, and then I believe signed by the director of the animated film as well, too. I'm not sure if we've looked through this one in the past, but we'll have a quick look. What do we got here for a year? We have 1972 again. I want to say that it's Parallax Studios, I believe, and it's this story here. To meet the faces you meet. A sci-fi story, a man alone in space with some holograms to keep him occupied, to pass the time as he's drifting through space. So yeah, there we go. Until he finds a human woman crashing against his spaceship. And I won't go any further with the story there. So as kind of in that EC tradition, there's always a bit of a twist happening with his sci-fi and horror stories. He had some appearances in Skull Comics as well. So we got Skull Comics number 2. Yeah, I'll send you a link there, Gore. I'll email you a direct link so you can read about it. I think they might have had a little bit of like a teaser images and stuff. Patton Oswalt does one of the voices. The actor who played Q in one of the Star Trek Next Generation, I'm pretty sure it's him that does one of the voices as well too. So this is Skull issue number 3 with a Spain Rodriguez cover there, Damien. Looking forward to that. Look at your Spain book that you got. And then even more Spain with Skull issue number 5. So these are the issues that have some Richard Corbin. This one has Spain Rodriguez, Jack Jackson, and Corbin. And these are 1972 as well. So 1972 was a prolific year. And then one of the oldest underground comics in my collection, this one, Skull issue number 6. I remember finding this in a bin, not knowing what the hell it was, but loving that front cover. I mean, I think this has another one of those stories that have, that seared into my mind. This is basically one of the panels from the Corbin story inside, and it's just a hell of a story. And another horror host here. Oh, Gore and Veach on this one. Oh, yeah, that's right. Geez. Okay, let's find the beginning here. So this is a Gothic Tale Part 2. Here we go, starting here with his, again, it feels like there's some things that he's kind of become known for throughout his career, and this kind of thing, like a Edgar Allan Poe type of story, feels like a Corbin staple. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing right there, Gore. There seems to be, what I've been seeing on social media is a lot of cartoonists, a lot of comic book artists and writers talking about Corbin and the effect that he had on their lives. But I don't know how much, I don't know what kind of effect he'll have out there, period, just us old guys. Here we go. Like that woman in the jar is phenomenal. That's a phenomenal grisly piece of art there. And then the reveal that our horror host was the old man throughout the story. And then an ad for Legion of Charlies, which I was also flipping through this evening when I was going through the underground. So there you go. That was Skull. That's issue number 6. Also appeared in some Slow Death. And these are 1970. So this is kind of, again, his kind of entering into the undergrounds. So Slow Death issue number 2. One of my least favorite Corbin covers. Just didn't print well. The imagery just isn't there. But this is Slow Death issue number 3. And there you go. There's Gore. There's proof right there. Gore. And then Slow Death number 4 with a pretty great cover. Issue number 5 with a Ran Holmes cover. So again, those are all stuff that he's appeared in. And then another one that I've talked about before. This one, again, is one of those that has an amazing color insert, mostly black and white. And then Corbin does some color in it as well, Up from the Deep. So that's it for kind of the underground comics side. And then just to flip through a couple of other things that I pulled out. Some of the Warren that I do have. I've got 3 issues of this Comics International. 2, 4, and 5 are the only ones that I have. Is this where maybe Vic and Blood wasn't in this? Was it, Gore? You'd probably know this, Gore Vidal. I want to say that it might have been in one of these, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Running out of space here, people. Let's put it down there. And Corbin doing all the covers on this, I believe, every single issue in this Comics International. And then issue number 5 there with some more. Oh, and that looks like the creepy with the shark, whatever the heck that one was called. There was that one-shot creepy magazine that I have with a Jaws type of character. So then this leads into just some Fantagore. And again, these I have a bunch of videos about here, but again, it's this idea that in the mid to late 80s, kind of going out there and starting your own publishing company to, again, just maintain that control. I really feel like he probably broke a lot of ground for a lot of artists who followed in his footsteps. And just, I hope that, you know, part of me agrees with you, Gore, with what you said about future generations and in bringing it up in a chat and nobody really batting an eye. But I would also like to believe that there are people that know about what Corbin has done for their career and kind of the path that some of these early guys who dipped their toes in a whole bunch of different areas have done for everybody that's come after them. And he really feels like a pioneer when it comes to that sort of thing. I would love to hear more about his life and kind of experience in comics. I would love to hear from Jan Sternad to see. And I think one of the things that I'm going to be doing over the next probably week or so is just scouring the internet, seeing if there's any more interviews with Corbin out there, because I haven't read a ton. Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher, and Other Tales of Horror. So this is 1979 on this one here. And then more of his Den from Fantagor. Corbin and Revelstoke, sorry. Children of Fire. Of course, the beautiful Movovum. These volumes are just stunning. I mean, even just looking at, don't want to open it too much, but looking at those end papers there. Beautiful stuff, incredible colors. Like, that work is just amazing, absolutely amazing. One of the versions of Neverwhere. And then the other version that I just picked up recently in a trade. And then finally, these last two, you can see a full video talking about these. So there's the hardcover of Bloodstar. So thanks very much, guys, for hanging out, Damien and Gore Vidal. I appreciate you guys hanging out as we kind of talk a bit more about Richard Corbin. Super important artist and just somebody who resonates with me the older that I get, because I'd seen his work in the undergrounds for so long. It was always there, but it really stood out as something different that I just wasn't into at the time. The older I get, the more I enjoy his art and the more I know about him, who he was as a man, and just kind of that type of artist, which I have the utmost respect for, taking control of their career, going into these relationships with publishers and companies and mainstream and underground with your head up and knowing what you're going to maybe get out of it, and hopefully writing his own ticket the whole way through those all those different interactions with people. A hell of a guy. And if you're kind of stumbling onto this video later down the line and you don't know much about him, I could recommend anything. There's a million things out there. Dark Horse has published a lot of stuff. Marvel has done some stuff to pick up anything and just give it a shot. Thanks very much. Oh, what's this? I think you could have a life with future generations if someone gets some good collections out there. I got a lot of responses on my video. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I've also been doing is looking at kind of his older collections, because there's collections of his underground work. There's collections of his Warren work. And a lot of that stuff, the price tag on those are incredibly hefty. And you said it in your video today as well, Damien. I think that now is the time, just to, you know, as often happens. But I think one of those things, and I believe we've spoken about it before, because he had such control over his output and over the stuff, and put it out in the way that he wanted to, I feel that that's still one of the things that is maybe not holding back, but just having that control themselves. I wonder how much control people have when it comes to reprinting his stuff. in a collection. Obviously, when you're dealing with some companies, there's things that are going to override any artist, I believe. But I wonder how that relationship is with Corbin and his wife, and with these individual publishers. So thanks very much, everybody. I'm going to cut it here. 45 minutes. Appreciate y'all hanging out. Thanks again, Damien and Gore, and we'll talk to you soon.